TCP/IP protocol suite. The TCP/IP protocol suite consists of many protocols that operate at one of four layers. The protocol suite is named after two of the most common protocols, TCP, that means transmission control protocol, and IP, that is internet protocol. These two protocol is the one of the protocols which is the first protocols, we can say, when these protocols was made. So these are the protocols, these are the one of the first protocols we have, that TCP and IP. So that is why this protocol suite name is after these two protocols, that TCP/IP. Now remember, this is not a single protocol, it is a suite of protocols, and it works on the OSI layer. If you say, then it works on these four layers. They work on the TCP/IP four layers, like application, transport, networking, and data link. So on application layer, we can say these all protocols like HTTP, FTP, POP3, SMTP, SNMP, and there are many protocols which works on these application layer. On transport layer, these TCP and UDP works. On networking layer, IP and ICMP works, and data link layer, Ethernet and ARP works. Now, TCP/IP was designed to be independent of networking hardware and should run across connection media. So this one was designed to run on any hardware, any network hardware, independent of the networking hardware, so that any other connection media can connect together, like different vendors can connect differently, connect together. Same as this is because of the OSI reference model. So it is taken from the OSI reference model, created these layers of TCP/IP, so that we can communicate with the different vendors. The earliest use and the most common use is over Ethernet network. This is the most common and earliest use of this TCP/IP protocol suite. Now, in this TCP/IP protocol suite, we have network protocols. Network protocols. Now, what is the protocol means? Protocol means a set of rules. Set of rules that defines the protocols. Like if you want to do something, then you will define the set of rules for doing that particular thing, and then that job you will call as a protocol. Now we are talking about network protocols. So network protocol is a set of rules that are used by the network system to communicate on the network. These are the set of rules or standards that defines the processes, principle, and synchronization of communication and error recovery methods. It can be deployed by a hardware, software, or combination of both. Now there are two types of protocols. One is the proprietary protocols, the second one is the standard protocols. Now when we talk about the proprietary protocols, so proprietary protocols are the communication protocols designed by a single organization or individual. The ownership of this protocol is entitled on the single organization or to an individual, which can put restrictions on the use of these protocols. So the entity may or may not provide the free distribution of the proprietary protocol. Other than the owner, other party or organization cannot make use of proprietary protocols. For example, these is Skype. Skype is of Microsoft, Apple Talk is of Apple, and Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol, this is for the Cisco. So these protocols are designed by some different organizations, and these are the proprietary protocols. So because these protocols are designed by these organizations, they have put restrictions on these protocols. That means these protocols will not work on any other devices. Like Apple Talk is only for Apple, so it works on only Apple devices. Just like the EIGRP, it works on Cisco devices, it will not work on any other devices. So this is the proprietary protocols. Then we have standard protocols. These standard protocols are protocols which are not bounded to any particular organization. Standard protocols can be used and implemented by the whole industry. Standard protocols are not specific to any vendor, and standard protocols are developed by the contribution of all the experts from different organizations. Examples are IP, TCP, UDP, and there are many more protocols. There are many more protocols which is standard protocols. Proprietary protocols are very less, but standard protocols are very much, because we have lots of protocols, and these all protocols are the standard protocols. Proprietary protocols are just few of them, we can say. So we don't have much proprietary protocols. Mostly we have standard protocols. Now the next thing is port number. Now ports are virtual pathways on which internet data flows. Now first, ports are like when you have a USB port in a PC, you have USB port, you have network port, you have a audio port, video port. These are the physical things. These are physical things which we say this is the port for this is the port for that. Now for every protocol we have also the port. Now for example, if you have 4 USB ports in your PC, so for USB port, when you see in the system, those ports will have a number, like port 0, then port 1, port 2, port 3, port 4, port 3, port 4, port 5, like this. Now these ports are physical, and the port numbers are the physical the numbers of that physical port. But we have these port numbers. Now these are logical port numbers. This is not a real port. There is no port there, but there is all the protocols have a unique port number. So these port numbers are virtual pathways on which internet data flows. And you probably know that the data on the internet is sent and from IP addresses. So what you might not have known is that all data sent on IP addresses is sent on a specific ports. And in other words, ports are numerical identifiers that makes it possible for you to check your email and browse the web at the same time. Typically, technically speaking, this is possible because browsing the web traffic generally uses port 80, and getting your email generally uses port 110. So it is because, like, suppose when your data goes onto the wire, so we can consider the wire as a highway, and these port numbers are as a lane. So when the data goes through the wire on the wire, so because of the port number, these data can be differentiated. Like, this is the traffic for the web services, this is the traffic for the mail services, this is the traffic for the different services. So these all can be differentiated because of the port number. Now if you remember the session layer of the OSI layer reference model, that session layer differentiate the session layer's job is to manage the sessions. So it is managing the session because of these port numbers. It is differentiating the sessions by these port numbers. And on the transport layer, it is having a unique port number assigned. So when the data goes out of the machine, so on the transport layer, it assigns a unique port number of the protocol, so that the data will go through that lane on the highway. So we can assume it like a highway, a cable, we can assume it like a highway, internet, and on that highway, these are the different port numbers are the lanes of different traffic. So this defined by the protocol, like which protocol uses which port number. So it is defined by the protocol, and it is defined by the developer of the protocol. So these are some technical facts about the ports. Ports are a 16-bit numbers which can range from 1 to 65,535. So because it is 16-bit numbers, so in a 16-bit you can have a number from 1 to 65,535. Then TCP and UDP packets specify the port on which they have to be sent in their packet header. So this TCP and UDP packets specify the port on which they have to be sent in their packet header, and this TCP and UDP works on transport layer of OSI. The port that a given application uses are generally set by the developer of that application. So as I said, the port which protocol use, it is defined by the application developer or protocol developer. So which port it is going to be used. Now these are commonly used network protocols. So as a networking student or a professional, it is necessary for us to know the different commonly used networking protocol. There is domain name services, that is DNS, dynamic host configuration protocol, that is DHCP, bootstrap protocol. It is also DHCP bootstrap protocol, hypertext transfer protocol, that is HTTP, driver file transfer protocol, that is TFTP, file transfer protocol, that is FTP, network file system, that is NFS, post office protocol, that is POP, internet message access protocol version 4 IMAP, simple mail transfer protocol SMTP, transport layer security, that is TLS, secure socket layer SSL, simple network management protocol SNMP. We have telnet, SSH, that is secure shell. We have TCP, that means transmission control protocol. User datagram protocol is the UDP. Internet protocol, that is IP, and internet control message protocol, that is ICMP, and address resolution protocol, that is ARP. Now these are the most commonly used protocols, but there are more protocols we have. Remember, we have the port number available from 1 to 65,535, but not all the port numbers are having the protocols. We have well-known protocols from 1 to 1023. These are the well-known port numbers assigned to the protocols. That means we have 1 to 1023 protocols which is well known. Now we don't have to remember the all protocols, but these are the well-known and commonly used protocols, network protocols we should remember. Now what we should remember about these protocols is that what is the name of the protocol and what it do, and what port number of these protocols, and whether it is using TCP or UDP for transmitting the data. So for these protocols we have to remember these things. First thing, you have to remember that what is the protocol do, then second, which port number it uses, then which transmission control protocol it uses, whether it is using TCP or UDP for doing the transmission. So these are the information you have to remember about these commonly used network protocols. Now first, domain name services, that is called DNS. So domain name services, or we can say system, that is DNS, is an internet service that translates domain names into IP addresses. Now because domain names are alphabetic, they are easier to remember. The internet, however, is really based on IP addresses. Every time you use a domain name, a DNS service translates the name into the corresponding IP address. For example, the domain name of www.thiscmsitservices.com might translate to this IP 23.229.193.162. The DNS protocol uses port number 53. The domain name system, DNS, is basically a large database which resides on a various computers, and it contains the names and IP addresses of various hosts on the internet and various domain. So basically DNS job is to resolve the names. Now remember, all the things on the network, whenever everything on the network Like when you connect any machine, you're connecting using the IP addresses. You do connect the machines by using the IP addresses, but suppose you're connecting on internet some site, for example Google, but you never put a you never put the IP address of that google.com. Basically, when you are connecting any site, you are connecting that server which is hosting that site, and that server has an IP address. IP address like this. IP address is provided by the IP protocol, and it is a unique numbers which is defined by the administrator to that server, and that server hosting the site. So when you access the site, you are actually accessing the host, the server which is hosting that website, and you cannot connect that site without IP address. You cannot connect that server without IP address. So every site you connect has a unique IP address, has a server, and that server has a unique IP address. But these numbers we can't remember. As you know, you save the mobile numbers in your machine. You don't remember the mobile's number also. So in your mobile you don't have a mobile numbers only. You save them as a name. So this is human tendency. We can't remember the numbers, but we can remember the names. So if I tell you to remember 50 numbers, different 50 mobile numbers, you can't do that. But if I say remember the 50 names, then you can easily remember the 50 names. So we also save names instead of mobile number in our mobile. So just like that, these IP addresses are the numerical numbers, and we can't remember these numbers. So this we can access by the name, and because of the DNS it is possible. And you know, on the internet you have millions of different sites, so we can't remember every site's IP addresses. So when you try to access the site by using the name, so first our query goes to the DNS server. Remember, first query goes to the DNS server, and DNS server from the database, its own database, it will give you the IP address of that site, and then our machine will connect to that site. So it do two types of query. It do forward query and reverse query also. Forward query, that means when you give a name, it will give you IP. This DNS server. DNS server, that means the machine which is having this protocol configured. It is called DNS server because it is serving the service of DNS. So when you give a name, it will give you IP. This is the forward query. Now it can do the reverse query also. That means when you give an IP address, it will give you the name of that machine also. Now reverse query we don't do normally, because when you know the IP, you don't need to know the name, because you can directly connect with the IP. You don't need to name the know the name. You can directly connect with the IP address. But mostly we do the query for the forward query. That is, when you give a name, you get the IP address, and then you connect that machine with this IP address. So this is what the DNS job. And DNS uses what? DNS uses 53 port number. Now what transmission control protocol it uses? It uses TCP for data zone transfer, and it uses the query. This queries works on UDP, because this query needs to be done very fast. Remember, when you give any name on the site, any name in the browser, it will very quickly resolve, and your machine connects the server very quickly. So you need to do the query very fast. So these queries goes with using UDP, because it do fast query. It cannot go by the TCP, because TCP maybe slows the query, but it uses UDP because the data is not important. So it goes by the UDP, and it does not go by the TCP. But DNS protocol also use port number 53 of TCP. When it uses port number 53 for TCP, it is because when two DNS server try to do zone transfer from each other. That means if suppose we are having two DNS servers in our network, and we want to make sure that both DNS servers are updated with the same records, then what these two DNS servers do, zone transfer to each other. That means one DNS server will send the information to other DNS server, and other DNS server will send the information to other DNS server, to make sure that both the DNS servers are updated with the latest record. So when they do the transfer, it is called zone transfer. So when they do the zone transfer from one to other, they use TCP port 53. But when the query comes and goes, these queries will use the UDP. So DNS protocol use TCP also and UDP also. TCP is only for the zone transfer among the servers, and UDP for all the queries. All the query for forward query or reverse query, all the queries goes by the UDP. Now see, when your internet is connected, now suppose I want to connect some site. So I will use ping command to check the connectivity with the other server. So let's say I will do www.facebook.com. Now you see, I'm getting the reply from that server. That means I'm connected to that server. Now remember, when you are connecting the facebook.com, so basically you are connecting a server which is hosting the site, and this is the IP of that site. This is the IP of that server. So who is resolving this? So when I give this name, so my machine don't know. My machine don't know about the IP address. So my machine send the query to the DNS server saying that what is the IP of this name. Then DNS server gives me this IP address. And then my machine sends the request to that IP address and get the reply. So this is what DNS server is working. We can query our DNS server by using nslookup command. So when I give this command, you can see this is my DNS server IP address. And so this is my DNS server IP. Now suppose I say I want to know about the IP address of this name. So this is, I'm doing the forward query, I'm giving the name, and what it is doing, it is giving me the IP address of that name. So it is saying that this is the actual name of that server, this is the real name, this is IPv6 and this is IPv4, and this is the alias for that server. Alias is just like a pet name. Now when I give the IP, that means I'm doing the reverse query, which we don't require normally. It gives me the name. It is the name of this IP address. So this is what DNS, which do what? Resolve the names to IP and IP to name queries. So everything on the internet has a unique IP address. So whenever you connect any site, your query goes to first DNS server, and DNS server reply with the IP address of that site, and then your machine connects to that site. So this is the job of DNS server. It works on port number 53. It uses UDP for the query. UDP for the query, that means for using the transmission, it uses UDP, and TCP also for doing the zone transfer. Then the domain name system is used to provide information to the, as we say, that domain name services. When queries are made, DNS is hierarchical in structure. A domain is a subtree of the domain namespace. From the root, few of the assigned top level domains are like this: gov, that is for the government. When you type any site, you have .com, .gov, .edu, .net, .com, .mil, .org. These are the top level DNS servers, which is what on the internet and having the information about these different sites. Like when you are having .com site, then the information for that com site will be under this com servers. If you are having edu site, so the information for that edu site is under this edu server. So this DNS is hierarchical. That means first you will see any name, that means first you will see the name of the machine, and then you will see the name of the domain name, and then you will see the .com or something. Like if you are having www.google.com, so www is the machine name, Google is the domain name, and .com is the top level DNS server name. It is available on the internet. So the full name of the any machine in the DNS environment, it is called FQDN, that is fully qualified domain name. Now the next thing is DHCP. DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or we can say Bootstrap Protocol, that is BOOTP. Now this Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol is used to assign IP addresses to host or workstation on the network. Usually a DHCP server on the network performs these functions. Basically it leases out addresses for a specific time to the various hosts. If a host does not use a given address for some period of time, that IP addresses can then be assigned to another machine by DHCP server. When assignments are made or changed, the DHCP server must update the information in the DNS server. Port number 67 for the DHCP server and port number 68 for the DHCP client. DHCP server is used to provide information to clients such as IP addresses, subnet mask, default gateway, that is for the routers, domain name, then the DNS server's address, and if you are having any Win server, that is Windows Internet Naming Services, so it provides that information also. So this DHCP is to provide the information about the IP addresses. So there is two options we have to give IP addresses information to any machine or any host. We can use it manually or we can use it automatically. Now manually, that means when you give IP address to any machine, so you have to provide the IP addresses just like the IP address, the subnet mask, you have to provide the router's address, you have to provide the domain name, DNS server's address, and even if you have Win server's address, you provide the Win server's also, Win server's address. Now this information when you provide manually, so we can make a mistake. If suppose you are having only 10 machines, then it is okay, you can do that. But suppose you are having 100 or 200 machines, then it is difficult for administrator to assign this information manually. So administrator can make mistakes. It can use the same IP more than one time, then it can become conflict. Then it can do what? It can waste the IP address also, because you are giving it manually, so it is like permanent IP address you are giving. So permanent IP address, that means if the machine goes down or corrupted, so your IP will also go with that. You don't know that, then it will go that. So this is what like giving a permanent IP manually, and that will make waste of IP addresses, make mistakes of repeating the IP addresses. So for solving these all problems, we have what? DHCP. This DHCP protocol we configure on the server, and that server called DHCP server. Now that server's job is to provide these IP information to the clients automatically. Automatically, that means the client, whoever client asks for the IP address, it will give the IP address to that client. And when the client asks for the IP address, it follows this process. It is called DORA process. So the client will ask for the IP address. Now how the client will ask? So we configure the client for asking the IP address. That means there is two options, I said, manual or automatic. So when you configure the client to get the IP address automatically, so what the client do? Client send the discover packet. It send the DHCP discover packet. It is like IP address request, and it goes to everyone in the network. But nobody will reply. Only the DHCP server will reply. Only DHCP server will reply with DHCP offer packet. Offer packet, that means it will offer the available IP addresses. Available IP address, the IP addresses which we configured in the DHCP pool. We configure the DHCP protocol with the pool of IP addresses. So within the pool, if any IP addresses are available, so it will offer that IP address to the client. Now the client will say, okay, I will accept that offer. It will say DHCP request. It will send a request for accepting that IP address. This is like the IP address selection. Now what DHCP server do here, in the database of DHCP server, it will note that this IP address is given to this client, and it is not for the permanent, it is only for the lease time. Lease time, we can configure the lease time on the server. So it will give the IP address to the client only for that lease time, and it will be available to this client only for that period of time, and after the period of time that IP will be free, and that IP will be free to give any other machine by the server. So it will be free after that time. So it will update the information about that IP, that this IP is given to this client for this period of time, and then the DHCP server send the acknowledgement packet, DHCP ACK packet, saying that I have updated my records, you can now use this IP address, and then this client will assign that IP address automatically to its system. So this is what DHCP, it is used to assign the IP information automatically to the client, and this is useful when you are having too many clients, like you are having 100, 200 clients, then it is easy for the administrator to configure the IP addresses using the DHCP server. As with the boot P, DHCP uses the machines or NIC, Ethernet, MAC or hardware addresses to determine IP address assignment. The DHCP protocol is built on boot P and replaces the boot P. So previously it was called boot P, now it is the DHCP protocol, and it uses the machine's MAC address. MAC address is the unique physical address of every network interface card, network adapter. So that adapter address, that MAC address are used to give the IP address, because remember, when the client asks for the IP address, it does not have any IP addresses here in this client, it has only the MAC address, which is the physical address. So when it sends a request, in the request it has its own MAC address available. So by this MAC address, this server knows that this client I have given this IP address. So it knows by that MAC address, because the MAC address is unique in the world. So it knows, the server knows that this MAC address I have given this IP address for this period of time. And this is what the working of DHCP server. Now it uses which port numbers? It uses 67 and 68 port numbers, and it uses on UDP. Why it use UDP? Because this communication must be done very fast. We don't want to wait for this. Like when you start the machine, you need the IP address very quickly. Now any of this request goes corrupt or goes drop or goes down, we don't care about it. We can send the discover packet too many times, we can send the packet lots of times, because there is no data here. So we can send many times the discover packets without caring of the data. But if we want to send it quickly, we don't want to wait for it. So that is why it goes with the UDP port number 67 or 68. Now port number 67 for the DHCP server, that means when the client send the request to DHCP server, it sends on port number 67. And when the client, the port number 68 for the DHCP client, that means when server reply with the offer, so it replies on this port number 68. So DHCP server will listen on port number 67 and DHCP clients listen on port number 68. Now this is my server, and this server is also a DHCP server. I have already configured this DHCP server. So what we configured in DHCP server, we actually configured the pool, a range of IP addresses which is available to give. And any client who asks for the IP addresses, it will get that IP address from this pool. So this is our server, and this is the pool I have configured. And in this pool, I have the IP address range from 192.168.0.160 to 192.168.0.190. So I have assigned this range, and if anyone asks for the IP, so it will get the IP within this range. Right now there is no IP assigned to anyone, so it does not have any record. But when anybody asks for the IP, it will get the IP from this scope, and it will get the IP from here, and we will see that IP is given to someone, address leases. So let's ask for the IP from Windows 10 machine. Now this is my Windows 10 machine. I will go to control panel, network and sharing, and I will go to adapter setting, and this is the network adapter. So I will go to the properties and IPv4, and this is manually IP assigned. It is saying use the following IP address. This is the manual configuration, but I want to use it from the DHCP server, so I will say obtain IP address automatically. For the IP address for the DNS information, I will say OK and OK. Now you see it is identifying, it is trying to get the IP from server, and now it is got it. And now when you check the status, you will see the IP address. You will see the IP address, you will see it is coming from DHCP server is yes, that means it is coming from the DHCP server. This is the address it is getting, subnet mask, this is the time for the lease time, it is obtained right now and it is going to expire on this date and time. And then this is the gateway, this is the server, DHCP server is giving the IP address, DNS server IPs, 3 IPs of the DNS server it is giving, no win server IP, NetBIOS is enabled, IPv6 will be always there. So this all information is giving from the DHCP server, the server which we have configured there. And this is the server who is giving the IP address. I will refresh this lease, and I can see this IP is given to this machine, and this is the lease expiry time, type DHCP, it is a unique ID. So you can see the information about the IP given to that machine. So it is noted here on the database of DHCP server. So this is how the DHCP works, uses port number 6768 of UDP for server and client. Now you have Hypertext Terminal Transfer Protocol, that is called HTTP. This Hypertext Transfer Protocol is an application protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information system. This HTTP is the foundation of data communication for the World Wide Web, Internet. HTTP protocol uses port number 80. Hypertext is structured text that uses logical link, that is hyperlink, between nodes containing text. HTTP is the protocol to exchange or transfer hypertext. It is used to make a request from the client to the web server that open the right resource when you click on a link or type a URL in the browser, in the web browser. So wherever that resources may actually resides. So basically it is using for transferring the text data. Now this is not a text, it is hypertext. Hypertext, that means the coding which we make to design the web page, that is HTML coding, SSS coding, CSS coding. It is what? It is type of hypertext. So it is to transfer the hypertext data. Transfer the hypertext data from server to client. So when you connect the website, when you ask for the site, when you give the URL, that means you are asking for the hypertext data. So it will, the server will give you the site, you will see the website. When you click on that link, you will see the website, that page of that server, that website. That page is designed by the hypertext language like HTML, XML, or we can say CSS and other languages. So very simple, whatever the website we access, it uses HTTP protocol. Whatever website we uses, very simple, you give the URL, you send the HTTP request to the server, that means available on the internet, World Wide Web, and that server will respond with the page which is hypertext page, and you will see the website there in your machine. Now it works on port number 80 and it uses TCP because the data is very important. Whether it goes slow does not matter, but the data is very important, so it goes by the port number 80 of TCP. It uses port TCP for transmission, and it uses port number 80. So whenever you access any site, you are accessing what? HTTP protocol. You're using the HTTP protocol. So in your browser, when you give a URL like this and enter, so you are getting what? This web page It is actually designed on HTTP HTML language, that is what hypertext. It is a hypertext data, and you can see if you see the whole link, it is actually http:// it is not showing here, but if suppose I copy this whole site and so the URL is like this, http:// that means it is using HTTP protocol for accessing the data, and it is accessing from this server, and this is the hypertext data, and it is also working on port number 80. Then we have file transfer protocol, FTP. This file transfer protocol is a standard network protocol used to transfer computer files from one host to another host over a TCP based network such as the internet. It uses port number 21. FTP is built on server client architecture and uses separate control and data connection between the client and server. FTP users may authenticate themselves with a clear text single sign-in protocol, normally in the form of a username and password, but can connect anonymously if the server is configured to allow it. So this FTP protocol is to transfer the file from server one host to other host, but it uses the server client architecture. Server client architecture, that means you have a centralized server where you can store all the files, and then you can download the file from there. So you can upload the file on the server, and you can download the file on the server, and you can upload the file and other user can also download the file. So you upload the file on the server. Suppose you want to send this file to one other client, so you will upload the file on the server, and that client can download the file from the server. So it uses client server architecture. It uses what? Authentication also. That means without authentication you cannot connect the FTP server unless anonymous is allowed. So when you try to connect the FTP server, you have to provide the username and password, and then you authenticate yourself, and after authenticating yourself you can access the FTP server, you can upload the file, download the file, and then other user can also do the same. So basically normally it uses what? Port number 21 of TCP. It is TCP based network because it uses the TCP. TCP it is using because it is the file transfer protocol. It uses to transfer the files, and remember the files are very important and we can't lose the files, so we have to use the TCP to make sure the file definitely reach the destination. So that is why it uses TCP, and it uses port number 21. Just like this server is my FTP server, and this is the root directory for FTP server. Now if any user connect this server, it will get into this directory, and it can see the file from this directory, and it can download the file from this directory. Like I will say FTP1, I am putting some files here. FTP2. So these are the files I have put it into the root directory of FTP. Now any client, like for example I'll go to Windows 10. This is my server. I'll go to Windows 10. So from this server, this Windows client, user can access the FTP server. Now how they will access? They can access it by the CMD. So it will go to the CMD. It will go to command prompt, and it will give FTP command after the server's IP address or name. Now it is asking for the username and password because it is using the client server architecture. So I will provide the username and the password, and now it is logged in, and it can check what are the files there in the server. So you can see these are the two files which I have created right now. So it can download these files and it can upload our its own files also. It can download the files, like it will say mget, and then it will mention the file name. Are you sure? Yes, it is downloaded successfully. Now where the file goes? The file goes on this directory. When I was logging in, I was in this directory, users administrators directory. So the file goes to that directory. We can check. We'll go to C drive and users and administrators, and we can see the file here. Now if you want to upload the file, so you can upload that. So I will create one file here for uploading. So I will say this is my client1 file and I want to upload this file. So I will go to this and I will say mput for uploading client1.txt. Are you sure? I will say yes, and it is successfully transferred. Okay, it is access denied. Now why it is access denied is because of the server configuration. Server is not accepting the file. It is because of the permissions. That is because of the permission of this directory, because users are not having a permission on this directory. This is not the configuration, but let me do this for some time. I will add the user here for some, and I will give some permission here. So now that user is also having a permission. Now I will try again, and now it is transfer completed. Now we can check on the server. So we can check on server and we can see the file here, which is uploaded from the client. So uploading and downloading, and it uses the client server architecture. This is what FTP, and also it uses port number 21, and it uses TCP because it is reliable. It wants to do the reliable communication because it is sending or receiving the files. Then we have Trivial File Transfer Protocol, TFTP. This Trivial File Transfer Protocol is a simple version of FTP that allows a client to get from or put a file onto a remote host, same as FTP, but TFTP is a simple protocol for transferring files implemented on top of the UDP IP protocols using well-known port number, that is 69. Now this TFTP uses UDP. It is not using TCP. Instead it is sending the file, but still it is not using TCP. It is using UDP port number 69. One of its primary uses is in the early stages of booting from a local area network. Because TFTP is very simple to implement, TFTP lacks security and most of the advanced features offered by more robust file transfer protocols such as file transfer protocol, that is FTP. So TFTP is what using, first it is using UDP, it is not using TCP, but it is using because that it is lacking the security features like FTP also. TFTP protocol cannot be used for directory browsing. It can do nothing but only send and receive files. This protocol sends smaller blocks of data as compared to FTP without any authentication access. Hence, it is insecure, due to which it is less supported or used in site. So it is not using in the site, it is only for sending a small chunk of data, a small block of data, and it is used mostly for broadcast kind of transmission. So if you want to send a bulk of files to someone, or you want to receive a bulk of files without doing any authentication, then it uses what? TFTP. So it just send and receive. It just send the data, acknowledgement, send the data, acknowledgement, send the data, acknowledgement, and then read boot file. Simple. Next is the network file transfer, network file system. It is called NFS. This NFS is a distributed file system protocol allowing a user on a client computer to access files over a network, much like a local storage access. It allows two different types of file system to interoperate. It has different versions: NFS 1, NFS 2, NFS 3 and NFS version 4. NFS protocol uses port number 2049. In NFS environment, a Windows server running NFS server software and the Unix host running the NFS client software allows to store the Unix files which can be accessed by Unix users. Hence, both Unix users and Windows users with Windows file system and Unix file system can access that same file with their normal file system in their normal way. Now first remember, this NFS protocol only for Unix system. It was not available in Windows. It is only used in Linux machines to share the files, share the directory on other Linux systems. So it uses the other systems can use the NFS share directory as their own directory, as their own data. So if suppose you share the file from one server, one machine of Linux to other machine, so the other machine can use it as their own directory. So it is what NFS protocol uses only for the Unix system. But now in Windows also we can share the NFS server, NFS data. Like we can share the NFS file from the Windows server. We can share the directory from the we can share the folder from the Windows server using NFS protocol, and that folder can be accessed by the Unix system using their own Linux machine. So now we can share the data from the Windows server using the NFS protocol. It is now supported in Windows after Windows Server 2012 and now in 2016, 2019 that we can share using NFS, and the Windows and the Linux client can use that share with the protocol NFS. Previously it was not available in Windows, it was only available in Linux system to share the directory. So with using the NFS protocol we can share the directory from one system to other system. It is for the sharing of data in the local network. Then we have post office protocol. In computing, the post office protocol is an application layer internet standard protocol used by local emails client to retrieve email from a remote server over a TCP IP connection. It is also known as incoming address, and POP has been developed through several versions, with version 3 being the latest one. So the latest one is version 3 and it is also called POP 3. So email clients using POP generally connect, retrieve all messages, store them on the user's PC as new messages and delete them from the server and then disconnect. Most POP clients have an option to leave mail on server after the download. A POP3 server clients on well-known port 110 or secure socket layer on well-known port TCP port 995. So this POP protocol is basically to retrieve the mail, basically is for retrieving the mail from the mail server. So when you are having a mail server, you are having a mail server here. So when you use the POP3 to connect the mail server, so you want to retrieve the mail from server to your local machine. So it uses to retrieve the mail. So it do what? It downloads all the mails available on the mail server to your local machine. It is actually the application protocol. That means when you use the application client like Outlook, you use the mail client, Outlook client, or any other application which connects the mail server. So it do what? It uses the POP3 to connect the server and download all the mails to your local machine. Remember, by default it downloads all the mail from the server and then it deletes the mail from the server. So after retrieving the mails from the POP3 protocol, all the mails will be downloaded in the client machine and it will not be available on the server. But most of the client applications have an option to leave the messages copy on the server. So if you want, then you can configure your mail client using the POP3. You can configure the mail client that do not download all the mails, just copy the mails in the local machine so that it can be accessed from the other system also. So this other protocol is called SMTP. It is basically to send the mail, and POP3 is for receiving the mail. Now it uses TCP because we are talking about the mails, and which is important. We can't lose those mails, so we know we want the reliable connection. So we use it uses the TCP, and it uses the port number 110. Now 110 is the non-secure port, but if you use a secure port, if you use the secure POP3, then it becomes 995. Now secure by using the SSL. SSL is basically for securing this non-secure connection. It is a protocol to secure these non-secure protocols. Then we have Internet Message Access Protocol version 4, that is IMAP. This in completing, the IMAP is an internet standard protocol used by email clients to retrieve email messages from a mail server over TCP IP connection, just like POP3. The current version of IMAP is version 4, and IMAP was designed with the goal of permitting complete management of an email box by multiple email clients. Therefore, clients generally leave messages on the server until the user explicitly deletes them. An IMAP server will typically listen on port number 143, and IMAP for SSL, that is secure, is assigned the port number 993. Now it uses this IMAP do what it do, same as our POP3. It uses same what to download or retrieve the mail from the server, but it is having a difference again. From the POP3 is that it will not download all the mails, and it will not delete the mails from the server. By default, it keeps the copy on the server, and it keeps the download the copy of the mails on the local system. So it was previously, it was only POP3 when there was low the network was very slow, so every time you can't access the mail from servers. So on that time, the client was using POP3 so that they can download all the mails on the client machine. Then they don't need to connect every time the server, so they can see the mails on the client machine every time. But there was a problem there. When you download, when suppose I connect the mail server using the POP3 from my desktop machine, now all the mails are downloaded here. Now when I connect the mail server by using my different machines like laptop or mobile, then what, I will not get any mail because the mails are already downloaded on this desktop. That was the problem of using POP3 by default. But and for that we have this IMAP. Now when you configure your mail client using IMAP protocol, so it will do what, it will copy the mail on your server, on your client, leave the copy on server by default. So what is the benefit here? You can access the mail on the desktop, then when you connect it from the other devices, then still you can get the mail because the mails are already there on the server. It is not downloaded on the client machine. By default it do that, but if you want, then if you delete the mails, then you will not get the mail from the server. Now it uses the port number 143 again for TCP because we are talking about mails. We want reliable connection, so it will use 143, and it is not secure, it is unsecure 143. But if you secure the server, if you secure the protocol, then it will become what, 993 when you apply SSL on it. That means IMAP S. Then we have SMTP. Those POP3 or IMAP is for receiving the mail. This one is for sending the mail. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, known as outgoing address, is an internet standard protocol for electronic mail transmission where mail are sent from client to mail server. SMTP is used to send mail. POP3 is used to receive the mail. SMTP by default uses TCP port 25, and when secured by SSL, also known as SMTP-S, uses the default port 465. Although electronic mail servers and other mail transfer agents uses SMTP to send and receive mail messages, user level client mail applications typically use SMTP only for sending messages to mail server for relaying. So this is only for sending the mail. POP3 or IMAP is for receiving the mail. So as you see here in the image, you send the mail to the server by using the SMTP protocol, and then from this server to other server, like suppose you are sending the mail, you are connected to Google server and you are sending the mail to Microsoft user. So This is Google server and this is Microsoft server. So your mail first send to the Google server, your own mail server. Then this mail server will send the mail using the SMTP to the other mail server, which is Microsoft mail server. And then from there you can retrieve the mail by using POP3 or IMAP protocol. Then we have these TLS and SSL, that is transport layer security, and its procedure is a secure socket layer SSL, both of which are frequently referred to as SSL. These TLS are cryptographic protocols that are used to enabling secure online data transfer processes such as surfing the website, downloading from sites, sending messages across networks, etc. And most websites are use TLS for setting secure communication between their servers and web browsers client. The primary goals of the TLS protocol is to provide privacy and data integrity between two communicating computer applications. So by default, some protocols are not secure, like HTTP itself is not secure, because when you send the data using the HTTP, FTP, POP, IMAP, SMTP, it goes by the plain text, and if anyone grabs the data in between, they can see what you're sending. So for securing those communication, we use this SSL or TLS. It do what? It secures the data by using the encryption. It encrypts the data from user to server. So suppose you are accessing some site, so you can access it securely by using this SSL, and it uses this security. It uses what? Certificate to do the security. So normally when you connect any site, you are using HTTP port number 80. That is what? No secure. So when you send any data here, like you are sending your information of bank, credit card, anything, it is not secure. Anyone can get it. So for securing this connection, that server, these servers do what? It applies the SSL security, and it applies the SSL certificate security. So it provided the SSL certificate to the server, then the server will be secure. Now when you try to connect the server, then it will use HTTPS, and when it uses HTTPS, the port number become 443. Remember, when you see HTTP, it is not secure. When you see HTTPS, that means it is secure. So when you send any data, then that data will be encrypted by using that certificate. So when you connect the server will send the certificate to the user, and then the user send any data, it send that data by encrypting that certificate, and then the server can decrypt it by using their own certificate. So it is securing all the communication between server and client by using the encryption and by using that SSL certificates. Now you see, when you go to these sites, you see here it is lock. Now lock means it is secured, and this is not HTTP, it is what? HTTPS. This site is not HTTP, it is HTTPS. For example, you normally go to Google, you can see it is what? It is secure, connection is secure, and you can see the lock. So it is secure by using the SSL TLS connection, and is secure by using the certificates. You can see this is the certificate, and it is securing your connection. You can see the detail of the certificate. Same as this site is also secure, and you can see it is secure by using this certificate, and you can see that certificate also. So these are secured. When you go to some sites, if you don't see the lock, properly lock, if you see the error, that means the site is not secure, or if you see the HTTP, that means the site is not secure. Your connection from your machine to the server is not secure. Don't put any imported information there on that site, because it is not secure. Then we have Simple Network Management Protocol, SNMP. It is SNMP is used to collect and manipulates information about network components. It collects information by selecting the devices on the network from a central network management console using SNMP messages at fixed or random intervals. Devices that typically support SNMP includes routers, switches, servers, workstation, printers, modem, racks, and more. In typical uses of SNMP, one or more administrative computers called managers have the task of monitoring or managing a group of hosts or devices on a computer network. Each managed system executes at all times a software component called an agent, which reports information via SNMP to the manager. SNMP agents exposes management data on the management system as variables. The protocol also permits active management tasks such as modifying and applying a new configuration through remote modification of these variables. Basically, this SNMP is to manage. It is to manage the devices. So suppose you are having in the network, you are having many devices like computers, routers, switches, servers. So you have printers, modems. Now if you want to manage all those devices or monitor all those devices, then you have to go each and every device to see what is happening there. Like suppose you want to see the router, what is the information, what is the traffic rolling on the router switch, or you want to see the status of your workstation or server, hard disk status, RAM status, processor status, network status. Then you have to go to those machines to check the status of those systems, those servers, and those workstation. Now if you are having lots of machines, lots of devices in your network, so the job is very difficult for the administrator. So for make it easy, what they can use the SNMP protocol in the network. They can install the agent. Now for using the SNMP, they will install the agent, SNMP agent on all the devices. Some devices are already have the SNMP agent installed and enabled, some does not have installed, or some has installed but not enabled. So you just have to configure the agent on all the devices. Then you will sit on the single machine, and in this machine you will install the manager. Then you don't have to go to each and every device to check the status. You can just send the request to that device and the device will send the information to that manager. So it will be easy for the administrator to manage all the devices. Then this is basically used for monitoring, but it can use also for modification. That means it can modify some parameters of these devices also. So you can send the request to change from the manager, and the device will change the configuration from there. So you can change remotely also. You can modify the devices remotely also. So this SNMP is the network management protocol which can use to manage network devices and servers and workstation from centralized location. One more thing, it uses UDP for transmitting, and also it uses port number 160 and 161. Then we have Telnet. Telnet is an application layer protocol used on the internet or local area network to provide a bi-directional interactive text-oriented communication facility using a virtual terminal connection, and this protocol is used to establish a connection to transmission control protocol. Port number 23. Through Telnet, user can access a remote client machine resources without being physically present over there. In the Telnet, the remote client machine appears as it is a terminal directly attached to the local network. In Telnet access, you gain a virtual terminal that acts as an interface with the chosen remote client machine. The Telnet by default does not encrypt any data sent over the connection, including the password also. Now basically this Telnet is to connect the remote device by using command line. So you can use the command line, you can do the command line connection through the server, Telnet server from client. So you can connect the remote machine from the command line. You can configure anything you want. It is as if it is your local machine. So it is used to manage the remote machine through the command line, but it is not secure because whatever the data you send through the Telnet protocol, it is not encrypted and does not use any secure protocol to secure it. It does not use SSL and also. So whatever you send instead of, you can also, that means username and password also, that is not secure. So anyone, if it can grab your data from the internet, from the network, then it can see your all data including your username and password also. So it is not secure, but it is used to manage the machine from remotely. Now there is SSH, that is secure shell, same as Telnet. This is also for managing the remote machine, but Telnet is not secure. In other hand, this SSH is secure. It uses the cryptographic encrypted network protocol to allow remote logging and other network services to operate securely over an insecure network. So SSH provides a secure channel over an unsecured network in a client server architecture, connecting an SSH client application with an SSH server. So common application include remote command line login and remote command execution, but any network service can be secured with SSH also. So the protocol specification distinguishes between two major versions referred to as SSH version 1 and 2. The standard TCP port 22 has been assigned for connecting SSH server. SSH was designed as a replacement for Telnet and for unsecured remote cell protocols. So there are many applications used for SSH, for example PuTTY, OpenSSH, Chrome Secure Shell, etc. It is not available in Windows, so you can't do SSH connection to Windows machine. It is only available in Unix systems. It do what? It encrypts the connection, as the Telnet do the remote connection from client to server, but it is not secure. But SSH do what? It create the secure tunnel by using the encryption technology within the unsecure network. So anyone who try to grab the data between, they will not see any data because it is encrypted. So simple, it do what? It just do the encryption from client to server to secure the data. So it is same as Telnet, but it is secure than Telnet. Then we have address resolution protocol, that is ARP. Now ARP stands for address resolution protocol. Now when you try to ping an IP address on a local network like this 192.168.1.1, your system has to turn the IP address into MAC address. This involves using ARP to resolve the address, hence its name. Now basically I will show you that when your data goes to the data link layer, suppose you're not only the ping, if you do send any data to any machine, suppose you are sending the data to this 192.168.1.1 machine. So when your data wants to go out of the system. Now when your data wants to go out, it goes through application, presentation, session, transport, network, and then it reaches the data link layer. Now on the data link layer, your machine has to add the source and destination MAC address. Now remember, you are only giving the IP address, you are not mentioning the MAC address of this IP. So what it do on data link layer, it has to add the MAC address of source that it knows because it is own MAC address, but the destination MAC address it don't know. Your machine don't know the destination MAC address. It only knows this IP address. So what? It has to add the MAC address on the destination on that packet before sending the packet. Now to know the destination MAC address, our machine runs this ARP protocol on data link layer so that it can get the destination MAC address. So what our machine do? Our machine sends the ARP request for this IP. It is like saying who has this IP. It will go to all the machine in the network, and every machine receives the request, but nobody will reply. Only the machine which has this IP address will reply with its own MAC address. And then with the DRP reply, we'll get the MAC address of that machine, and then our machine sends the data adding that MAC address into the packet. So our machine sends the request for the particular IP address. It will go to every machine. Nobody will reply. Only this machine will reply that this is my physical address. Now when next time when our machine wants to send the data to the same machine, it will not do this every time. It will do what? It will create the cache of ARP. In that cache you have all the available MAC addresses stored into that cache. So next time when you send the data to the same IP, our machine knows the MAC address of that IP, and it does not do the same broadcast for ARP request. For example, if I want to ping some system, Now remember, I am sending the ping request, but I am only giving IP address. I am not mentioning the MAC address of that machine. So my machine has to find the MAC address for that system. So when you do this, so our system find the MAC address before sending this request packet. Now when it finds the MAC address, it is stored it into the cache. We can check by this command arp-a, and you can see this is the IP address of the system and this is the MAC address of that system, and it has read it dynamically. And this is the one which I have pinged right now, and this is the MAC address of that system, and it has also read dynamically. There are some static MAC addresses added for the security reason. In now Windows 10, you have these MAC addresses added by default. This is static, this comes default, and this is the one which is read by this system by using the ARP protocol. So ARP protocol's job is to find the MAC address of the particular IP address, because whenever we do any communication, we only mention IP address, we don't mention the MAC address. Just like I use the FTP command to connect the FTP server, so I only use the IP address, I don't give the MAC address. Our system don't know the MAC address, so it do what? It uses the ARP protocol to find out the MAC address. Then finally we have ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol. This control message protocol is one of the main protocols of the Internet Protocol suite, and it is used by network devices like routers to send error messages. Simply it is to send the error messages. For example, that a request service is not available or that a host or router could not be reached. ICMP can also be used to relay query messages. It is assigned protocol number 1, and ICMP differs from transport protocols such as TCP and UDP. Remember, it will not use TCP and UDP itself, it is ICMP. In that, it is not typically used to exchange data between systems, nor it is regularly employed by end user system. So end user network application. Example, while pinging a host, Internet Control Message Protocol ICMP echo request packets are sent to the target host and then waiting for ICMP echo reply. So when you use the ping command, it sends the echo request and wait for the reply, and all these messages is handled by the ICMP protocol. So it is handling the messages just like I did this ping. So when I'm getting these reply messages, these are the messages managed by the ICMP. So this echo protocol is going with ICMP and it is finding the reply from the ICMP. If suppose any machine is not there, like I ping some IP which is not available, now it is the responsibility of ICMP protocol to give me the reply. Now you see it is sending the message and it is saying that destination host unreachable. So you see these messages, destination host unreachable, request timeout. These are the responsibility of ICMP protocol to manage and give you the messages, error messages. So this is TCP/IP protocol suite, which has there is lots of protocol in that suite, but we have some common protocol that we have to know about it. Those common protocols like these protocols, we should know about these protocols, like what they do, which protocol port number they use, and which TCP or UDP they use. They use TCP or UDP, we should know that.